It's a big pleasure for me to meet you, þórdís. And before we will start to make this interview, I would like to say that we met each other firstly 2 days ago in Reykjavik. And intuitively, I knew immediately that I would like to make interview with you. And I intuitively thought that probably you are a writer of short stories and poems. Mm-hmm. And then you sent me your short stories, and I realized that you are a writer mostly of short stories and poems. So I was right, and I was very happy. And that's how we met, actually.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy. So good to meet you.
Yeah. Just shortly about me, I'm a Czech writer living since 2007 with my family in Berlin, but I'm still writing in Czech, and I'm, as you, author of 2 books of short stories and 1 theater play too, and 1 novel. And it reminds me that you are not just a writer of short stories, poems, but you also got a very prestige stipendium in Reykjavik National Theatre. Is that right?
The Reykjavik City Theatre. Yes.
And in this during this residence, which was actually 2 years ago, or
yes.
What did you write there?
Well, it's due to COVID and everything, the play is still not been performed. It's a play about mothers and daughters and generational trauma in sort of absurdist setting, I guess. Mm-hmm. With a little dystopian overtones. I don't want to say too much. But it's a great opportunity. They hired me for 1 year and just welcomed me into the theatre. It was fantastic.
And in this play, in this drama, you have just women figures, or also some?
It's mostly women.
So would you call it like a feministic drama, or you wouldn't call it so?
No, it's not from, it's not ideologically conceived,
Okay.
But I guess, I'm a feminist, and I think all my work are a bit feminist.
And you started to write this drama during a pandemic, or?
Sorry? Before the pandemic,
before,
yeah.
So there is nothing from pandemic?
No, I'm so sick of the pandemic. I think everyone's so sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to write about it, but it was just depressing. So I focused on other things.
Actually, it's another interesting topic and question. If you could deal with this, if you could even write about something what is so contemporary, what is nowadays as this pandemic situation, so you can't. You just want to.
I prefer not to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there are people who are probably writing very brilliant things about the pandemic right now, and it's good for them. But for me, it's too much. It's just not. Yeah. Also, I think because there's just all these even bigger things like climate change and just the state of the world that are still going to be relevant even long after the pandemic's gone. Mm-hmm. So I'm more interested in those. They're also depressing, but more interesting to me. Anyway.
How it happened actually that you started to write? You are based. You were born in Reykjavik. Mm-hmm. You had a beautiful childhood. I can imagine in Iceland. Non-problematic, no totalitarianism, no big deal. And then something happened and you started to write. What influenced you as a child to be a writer?
So at the beginning, I went through a period where I was reading Agatha Christie detective novels all the time, and I thought I'd write one. And it turned out to be actually very difficult to write a good crime plot.
I'm sorry, what was your favorite Agatha's detective story?
I don't even remember. I read all of them in a binge. Sorry, I can't remember. Yeah, but so that was a failed attempt. And then, you know, I wrote a little bit of, you know, poetry as a teenager. And then I was just always kind of scared to be an artist. So I did something else. It seemed like safer and not as vulnerable. And then at the end, it was just pulling at me too hard. So I went all in to writing.
Yes, that's what I want to say. You studied before creative writing. You studied philosophy.
Yeah.
And what was your? How is it comparing? Like, is there some line, some connection between philosophy and creative writing for you?
Yeah, definitely. So first, I think, you know, I went into philosophy because I like to argue, and you know, things are very clear cut. So your argument is sound or it's not sound, and you can just, you know, it's just logic and no feelings. You know, it's facts and logic, and I enjoyed that. And then I got, you know, I went on to do a PhD program, and then I dropped out of that because I found that it wasn't really the right thing for me. But I definitely got exposed to so many interesting ideas and concepts that, you know, have stayed with me, and that very, you know, very intellectually stimulating, and that I still think about all the time. Like, you know, language and meaning and concepts, and the philosophy of space and time very much fascinated me at one point.
It's interesting what you said about philosophy, that there is strictly logic and no emotions, because at least for me, as I'm a little bit far away from academic philosophy major, but for example Zarathustra or Kierkegaard, it's so emotional. I would even say hysterical somehow.
No, you're right. Yes, you're right. You're right. It's more that the philosophy that I was doing was leaning very much more kind of formal. You know, like, there are like these two big traditions. So the continental tradition and then the more Anglo-Saxon tradition that is, you know, analytical, and that was my thing for a while. But I do love Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. And
do you remember the feeling after you wrote your first short story, and you gave it to read to somebody? How was it, this reception with the first reader, or did you feel a big euphoria from writing, from starting to writing? I'm interested about this process of...
Yeah, it's a great question. Yes, I gave up eventually and went into, I just thought I'd do a creative writing program, so I went there. And just on my first day, I had this wonderful writer called Sophia, who told us all to just, you know, write down our dreams, and it was very, you know, connect to our subconscious. And something just clicked for me, because I'd always been trying to write, you know, rigidly, you know, like the crime plot. You know, you have to figure it all out and know what you're doing. And I was like, it's good if I don't know what I'm doing and just pull something out of my, you know, subconscious and experiment with it. And then I was so afraid to show my stuff to anybody. But when you're in class, you need to share your work. So I did, and I was just so surprised that it seemed to work. Like from the beginning, when I started the program, it was just, yeah, it was just working. So I think all these years of doing something else, it just fed into, you know, you're always maturing and, you know, yeah.
So you are more or less intuitive writer in this sense that basically maybe it's because you are also a poet, and you wrote a book of poetry, which I now we can see it here. So Tantaka, which means the first milk teeth.
Yeah.
Could you tell us something?
It's the process of the teeth coming in, Tantaka, and you know the babies will cry because it itches, and then they have their new teeth, and they can, you know, there's such strength in the teeth and they can bite into things. And there's a lot, I mean, I do write a lot about my own children and about children in general. I'm fascinated by watching them grow up from babies into big people. And it's also meant as a metaphor for kind of personal development and finding your own strength, and maybe also something aggressive in you that you can, you know, bite. Yeah, so it's some of the themes in this book.
These are like stones. Can you please, just for a feeling, read us some key poem from this?
Sure, yeah. Fasaskipti. Ég elska börnin mín og börnin sem börnin mín elska og börnin sem elska börnin mín. Þau keyra kuldaskó í gegnum ísinn þegar tjörnina hefur lagt. Þau elska að beita afli. Brjóta flísar úr ísingunni og halda þeim upp að andlitinu. Ég sé þau út gluggann, saltsleikt auga hússins. Þau sjá mig gegnum tært gler.
It sounded beautiful, and I'm just.
Thank you.
I was just in my imagination try to read it in Czech language as a Google translator.
What did you get from it?
I was thinking about roofs.
Roofs. Oh, interesting.
Inside of you, but maybe it's just, you know, it's just my fabulation. But I like this concept to take teeth as a metaphor of growing up, and because there is definitely very strong connections between life and death through our teeth. And I don't know if there is probably also this tradition with the first teeth who are taking off by some elf.
Yeah, tooth fairy.
Yes. Is it the same?
Yes, and we put it under the pillow, and you wake up and you find money. Is it the same?
Yeah, it is the same. Or some little present. It's not Czech tradition, it's more or less German tradition. You are an author of a wonderful short story collection book with the title Emperor Penguins in English.
Yes.
And I was laughing when I was just seeing this title, because it sounded to me quite sarcastic, especially if I know that in Iceland there was never some empire or whatever. So I would like to ask you, what did you mean by this title?
There are also no penguins.
No penguins.
No penguins, no empire, nothing.
Even better.
Right. So, like, the book has a number of themes. It deals with, you know, sort of climate change and the weird position we find ourselves in now. You know, people are always talking about the end of the world or the end of civilization. It's become like almost a cliche, and it's so weird, just this discourse. So some of the stories are a bit post-apocalyptical. Many of them feature animals and sort of deal with our relationship with the rest of the ecosystem and our relationship to animals in general, and some are, you know, going extinct. And it's just, you know, all sort of goes like threads through the book. And the title comes from a story. It's just straight up, you know, post-apocalyptic sci-fi. After the end of the world, 3 people are sitting in a house, and they don't know if there's anybody else there. They have a big lamp, and the electricity keeps going out, and all they want to do is watch the March of the Emperor Penguins documentary with Morgan Freeman narrating this dramatic march. And they very much miss Emperor Penguins, but they also very much miss Morgan Freeman, and it's just kind of, I don't know. I think a lot of the themes maybe for the book come together in this particular story, but I also think just titles are so mysterious to me. It just popped up, the book should be called Emperor Penguins, and I was like, yes, it works. I don't know why, but it just feels right. So, yeah.
And did you know it already at the beginning of writing that this book will have this theme, like?
No, because then I would have been paralyzed by planning. The way I work is just I have to just go from the intuition, and then when you look at everything afterwards, you're like, oh wow, so it's actually a very strong theme, because this is what's been on my mind, and
I really enjoying in reading your short stories this precise feeling of for dialogues, which sound very, very authentic, like from some film documentaries, like really very, very precise and gentle, soft work with dialogues, and at the same time, in this very cruel chicken story, I could read some kind of magical realism together with grotesque and feeling of emptiness. How is your relationship with animals, actually?
Oh, good question. I'm obsessed with animals, and so is my daughter. My daughter's 10, and she's very obsessed with that, which is normal, I guess, for a 10-year-old, but I never grew out of it. Just like their strangeness and their completely different experience in the same world that we share, it just fascinates me endlessly. I have a cat who is very old and very grumpy and does not feature into the stories because she wouldn't like it. So I don't write about her, but I write about whales and octopuses, very many either Arctic or Antarctic or sea animals, because their world is so fundamentally different from ours. It just amazes me.
Probably animals are stronger than human beings in many ways. Unfortunately, we don't know it exactly because they are not writing books.
Yes.
But if they would probably writing about human being, it would be something very, very sarcastic. If your cat...
and we deserve it, probably. Yeah. Yes.
It reminds me that that we have two turtles, and that they are very present in my short stories right now.
I would love to read about your turtles.
I hope you can. Did we talk already about the theater? Did we mention the theater?
Yes.
Yeah, but I would like to. I have to ask you for it. What does it mean? This genre, short story in literature. What does it mean personal for you? Because you're writing short stories instead of novels.
I just think it's, you probably agree, it's very underappreciated. And I just think both as a writer, I enjoy tremendously, because I have many ideas and not enough patience. And I just very much enjoy how you can throw up a whole world, and it's like set for a film, and you just have the fronts of the buildings, and you don't have to build the entire world. Like when you're writing a novel, you have to do so much world building. And I very much enjoy that you can just, create like a whole world with a little glimpse. Like that's the perfect short story that I like to read, is when you feel like you've glimpsed into something. It's much bigger, and it's just this one moment, and then you don't need to know everything. It's just, perfection. And it's just, as a reader, I enjoy short stories, and like we talked about, I think when we met the other day, just for our short attention spans and for technology, it's just a very nice format to read on the bus or on your phone. So I think I'm just surprised that short stories aren't as prominent as they should be, maybe.
We won't be here, but short story will survive us. In general.
Absolutely.
I would say, like, for me, it's a literally bonsai, something like a treasure in literature.
Yes.
Just you have to get on this wave, and maybe the way is to be closer to poetry too, because poems are for me somehow closer to short stories in this short way of saying, when you have to say something not in many pages like Dostoevsky did in This is Geniality, but in short way, in precise way.
And just short forms, people like short songs. I mean, people like symphonies, but people love, short, and I love watching just short films. It's something very satisfying about getting, the whole,
Plus, there is one more thing. Are more important for you in short stories questions or answers?
I don't think I really think about it that way. I think, there just has to be some kind of juice in the story. There has to be something like, that feeds me. Like, that's the way I think about it.
And which short story fitted you so strongly or intensively that you were thinking like for several days about this plot? Do you remember? Do you have something like this?
I remember the first time I read a story by the American writer George Saunders called Sea Oak. It's an absolutely amazing story and sort of exploded my conception of what was possible in this format. And I still think about it regularly years later. So, and all of his, I'm a huge fan of George Saunders, and he's almost exclusively written short stories. He has one novel and then many volumes of short stories. And he's my hero.
Before last question, I would like to show this book, which is it's recently published, or it's published right now.
Beginning of October.
Can you tell us something about this concept, which is very interesting?
So it's a novel called Olía, which means oil in English, and it's written by 6 people. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. We're a group of 6 women writers. We've been working together for a few years. We've done 3 volumes of poetry, and this is our first novel that we wrote as a group. As a collective. And we call ourselves Svikaskáld, which means imposter poets, because the thing that originally brought us together was this sense of all of us had this imposter syndrome, where we felt like we were cheating and somebody was about to find out that we were not supposed to be here and we were not supposed to, so this is a lack of confidence, and I think it's something very many people experience, but especially women. So we just started working with that and just breaking down this concept of the author as this, single genius, auteur who pretended that nothing affected his work, and to just all, collaborate. So it's been very, very fruitful. Collaboration, and in this book we are following the lives of 6 different women. So one of us created 1 character each, and they're all different ages and very different personalities, and we all sort of made up one voice, and then we have our characters interact and their plot weaves together. So it's a very, very delightful experience to write it together as a group. And we're very excited that it's coming out now. Yeah,
it's a very exciting project. It sounded like fighting against writer super ego and collaborate. It's
absolutely.
And it was interesting. You said first that you wanted to make a radio drama, and then it moved to.
Yeah, we were trying to. We wanted to try a new format because we had been writing poetry for a long time. So we thought we'd write radio drama, so we started making up these characters and these voices, and then it just didn't really work for radio. But it did work as a novel, so it just took on a life of its own, and people are very surprised. They're like, how does that even work? And we're like, it works, somehow.
Did you already choose your short story which you would like to present in this Middle European Literature Festival MAČ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a short story that's new. It's not in my collection Emperor Penguins. It'll be in my next collection, coming out hopefully next year. It's called The Sea Gives Us Children. And it's set in a little, very bare, sort of harsh island, little like Iceland, but smaller, and all the inhabitants are children. And they have their own mythology about why they're there and how children are created. And the protagonists are two sisters, one older, who's a bit in charge, and their baby sister, who's very lonely and ends up in a life of crime, in a way. So it felt right. It felt like the right fit. I'm not sure why, but yeah, I'm very excited.
Great. So still somehow Agatha Christie is working in you with a
There's
crime.
always, I think she's always there in the back of my mind. She's like the patron saint.
But apocalyptic story or parallel space too. So it's this beautiful mix of mushroom soup, let's say, Icelandic mushroom soup. I think it was the great answer, and I'm very happy to meet you and had opportunity to talk with you about your writing.
I'm so happy too. Thank you so much.